Elma took a deep breath, closed her eyes and counted to 5, just as a therapist had taught her 5 years ago, and then opened her eyes again. She was not seeing things. Sitting on the swing, on the big tree, swinging back and forth, was her mother, Nancy. Elma looked at Bill, who was staring at the woman on the swing, and then looking back at Elma, and then back at Nancy. "Is that—" he began, before trailing off. Elma nodded. "It is," she said. "It's my mother. Haven't seen her in years. Haven't even had a postcard from her in 5 months. And now look, here she is in another dimension." "Gooey!" Nancy shouted, waving from the swing. "Elma! Can't believe you're here. Herbert said he would find you." Elma took another deep breath and counted to 5 again. Then, fixing a smile onto her face, she marched forward. "Hello, Mother," she said. Elma thought her mother looked well. Too well, in fact. Okay, not so much too well, rather too young. Nancy was 103, but to Elma's eyes she looked suspiciously as though she was more like she was when she left on a motorcycle tour of the world. 80-ish. "Hello, darling," Nancy said, leaping from the swing like a 20-something. "How the devil are you? Haven't seen you in simply an age." Elma shook her head. Not since you buggered off on that death trap you won in a poker game," she said. "I was bored, dear," Nancy said. "Left home alone like that. Only had the internet for company after your dad died, so learning to play poker online was really just about company. Well, at first," she winked at Bill. "I don't know I'd be such a dab hand," she laughed. "After winning the motorcycle, I've been playing poker and winning games all over the world. Or should I say," she winked again at Bill, "worlds." "How have you been, Elma?" Nancy said, giving her daughter a big hug. Elma didn't like her mother's hugs very much. She never had. They seemed to go on too long. And besides, she was cross with the old woman, who didn't look old enough. And she wasn't going to let her get away with thinking you could hug your way out of a difficult situation. "Might have known you'd had something to do with dimensions unravelling or whatever it is that's happening," Elma said. "That's typical of you." Nancy pulled back from the hug and laughed. "Oh, you are silly," she said, and moved over to Bill and gave him a long hug too. Bill, Elma could see from his expression, looking over Nancy's shoulder, wasn't very comfortable either. "It wasn't me that started all the problems," she said as she let Bill go and smoothed down her top. "It was you, you big idiot. You didn't go to the monkey's wedding." Elma put her hands on her hips, feeling all the negative energy she had always felt around her mother, building up like lava under a volcano. "How the blasted heck is it my fault?" she said. "And what the flippery doodah is a monkey's wedding?" Elma's mother laughed. "You don't remember the invite to the wedding?" she asked. "The whole reason you went to Goodbye Nice to have seen you in the first place. I sent you a wire." Elma scrunched up her forehead in thought, as if squeezing her brain with her facial muscles would help push out the memory. It didn't. I don't remember you sending any kind of wire to me, Mother dear," she said. Anyway, who sends a wire these days?" She looked at Bill and raised her eyebrows. "Haven't you heard of email?" Nancy laughed, a sudden sound that for some reason made Elsa jump. "Of course I have, dear. Don't be such a bitch." Nancy looked over at Bill. "Is she always this difficult, or is it just a reaction to seeing her mother?" Bill, wisely, said nothing. "I sent you a wire because it was the only way of getting information out of Goodbye Nice to a Senior, as you well know. The internet was banned there the year before we went. You must remember," she said. "If you didn't get the wire, why did you come?" Now Elma did think of it, she did remember getting a message from her mother. Really, why else would she have ended up travelling around forgotten parts of Europe? And most people had never even heard of Goodbye Nice to a Senior, let alone visited the place. But she didn't want to think her mother had won the argument, so she just shrugged. "I don't remember," she said. "Why would me not attending a monkey's wedding, or whatever that is, of course dimensions starts drigging around anyway?" Nancy shrugged. "Don't ask me," she said. "I ain't no physicist, am I? Herbert might be able to explain better. Why don't you ask him? Talking of which, I did have a flea in my ear telling me something at a picnic, and I'm starving hungry. Bill looks like a man with a healthy appetite too. Let's crack open those sarnies, shall we? And I'll tell you what I do know." Elma narrowed her eyes at her mother. She felt she wasn't being entirely truthful. Nancy pointed to a blanket that was already conveniently laid out under the branches of the tree. Bill did look relieved that the picnic basket was being unloaded again, and didn't hang about when the sandwiches were offered. Elma thought he stuffed the first one into his mouth a bit too quickly. Nancy took a sandwich and nibbled on the crust in that way that she had that irritated Elma. She wanted to take hold of her mother and shake her and say, "Just eat the sandwich like a normal person, for flip's sake, mother." Either that, or take the sandwich and shove it into her mouth, shouting, "Eat it properly, woman!" But she did neither of those things. Instead, listening to her mother bang on about her trips round various different Europes in various different dimensions. Apparently Bill really had to see Paris in dimension 345. "It's just fabulous, Bill, really fabulous." Elma could feel herself getting more and more annoyed. So annoyed, in fact, she couldn't finish her sandwich.